Hello and welcome to a new video on my YouTube channel. First eine Info to my German-speaking viewers. Dieses Video ist auch mit deutschem Kommentar verfügbar. Der Link zum deutschsprachigen Video findet ihr in der Videobeschreibung. This video is about the SimLab XB1 Loadcell Handbrake. SimLab is known for the high quality of their products. I could already see that with the push-pull rolly shifter. You can find the link to the review video of the shifter in the video description. In the next few minutes, I will show you if the handbrake is also of such high quality and design. First, I will show you the handbrake in detail in this video. I will talk about the individual components installed and included in the package, say something about the materials, and explain how the handbrake feels. And at the end of the video, I will do a test drive with the handbrake and also show a video in form of my triple screen and driver's eye view onboard videos in my motion simulator.
Let's Go Race, the channel for virtual motorsport.
The package includes the handbrake, the handle of the handbrake, a 3-meter long USB cable, screws, washers, nuts and T-slot nuts, various types of elastomers and an aluminium spacer ring. I will explain later what this is used for. Let's start with the materials and the technical data of the handbrake. The handbrake is a CNC machine, full aluminium construction, and all components are anodized. The handle and the blue adjustment nut are also knurled for a rough surface for a strong and firm grip. The handbrake handle is screwed onto the handbrake via an M10 thread and sits bomb-proof. The handbrake has a width of 47 mm, a length of 165 mm and a height of 300 mm. The handle has a length of 140 mm and a diameter of just under 32 mm. With these dimensions, the handbrake handle sits comfortably in the hand. The 140 mm length ensures that even people with large hands can grip the handbrake comfortably, and the diameter is designed to fit both small and large hands. Thanks to the very rough, almost slightly jagged surface, you have an extremely good grip on the aluminium handle. In this area, the grip is comparable to grips on barbell bars or dumbbells in the gym. Slipping, even with wet hands, is almost impossible. Because this is the only point of contact between the hands and the handbrake, this is of course very important. And I can say that in my opinion, the grip is absolutely perfect and I have nothing to complain about. The handbrake is attached to a simulator via 2 points. On one side, you will find a hole in the 3 mm thick aluminium construction, and a slotted hole on the other side. To demonstrate, I attached the handbrake to a 40x40 aluminium profile with the included mounting material. The handbrake can be easily turned outwards via the slotted hole, but you can see this is only a few degrees. If you want to rotate the handbrake significantly more outwards, so that you can pull the handbrake towards you with the perfect angle, you should buy the angled bracket from SimLab for just under €29. The angle was too small for me, and I don't have the SimLab bracket. An inexpensive alternative could be to use an angled bracket like those often found on simulators made of aluminium profiles. I simply drilled another hole and screwed the handbrake to it. Another point is the stability of the 3mm thick and silver anodized construction. The angle also plays an important role here. If you pull the handbrake straight towards you, you can see that there's hardly any flexing of the construction. It is different if you pull the handbrake slightly to the side. In other words, if the angle of the handbrake position does not match the angle at which the handbrake is pulled, because then you pull the handbrake slightly to the side. You can see that the construction is already moving a lot. It's important to mention that you don't notice the strong movement when driving. Yes, the handbrake construction moves, but you don't feel it while driving. A negative point in this case could be that the construction is flexing. On the positive side, however, if the handbrake is not mounted at the perfect angle and you pull it towards you with a slightly misaligned angle, the design of the handbrake does not force you to pull the handbrake at the angle at which it is mounted, and that without you noticing it while driving. As you can see, it is difficult to say whether it is positive or negative in this case. For me, I actually think the positive outweighs the negative, because not everyone has the opportunity to position the handbrake at a perfect angle. And when it is perfectly positioned, the movement of the handbrake is almost non-existent, as you will see later during the test drive. The 3-meter long USB cable is connected to the handbrake on the side that is facing you when the handbrake is mounted. On the side for the handbrake, we have a micro USB, not a USB-C as with most new electronic devices. On the other side is the USB-A to connect the handbrake to the PC. At the moment, the handbrake is also only compatible with the PC. At 3 meters, the cable is long enough for any simulator, but I would have liked it better if the connection on the handbrake would have faced in the other direction so that you don't have to bend the cable to get back to the other direction, away from you, towards the PC or USB hub. However, the 3-meter long cable does its job very well and had no problems with it. The transmitted data was always correct and had no interruptions or delays. Now we come to the adjustment options for the handbrake. First of all, you need to know that the resistance of the handbrake is influenced by two parts. The preload generated by the black spring and the main resistance generated by the elastomers. The preload resistance of the spring is relatively low. It ensures that you have an increasing resistance level in the first part of the handbrake travel, but with a low resistance compared to the elastomers. When the spring is fully compressed, you reach the resistance of the elastomer. There can be various reasons for using the preload. You use it to get a longer handbrake travel, You use it to avoid having to apply a lot of force at the start when pulling the handbrake, or you use it to have some momentum before you reach the significantly higher resistance of the elastomer. How strong the preload should be is set using the two blue adjustment wheels. The more you compress the spring, the higher the starting resistance and the shorter the preload travel. If you want to completely dispense with the preload in the form of the spring, you can install the spacer washer on the inside of the spring, which I showed at the beginning. When this spacer is installed, the spring cannot be compressed. This means that only the resistance of the elastomers is effective and there is no spring preload at all. To be able to install the spacer ring, the blue adjustment wheels must first be turned backwards so that the handbrake is no longer under tension. Then push the handbrake out of the guide at the bottom left. The various components can then be pulled down one after the other. Please pay close attention to how the components are positioned. Under the yellow cover, you can see the load cell. This measures the force you exert yourself and sends the data to the PC. It does not measure how far you pull the handbrake, it measures how much resistance is exerted on the load cell. The built-in load cell measures up to 150 kilograms. In the high-end range, a load cell is used for all brake pedals and handbrakes. In the low-budget range, the distance the lever moves is measured or the braking distance is measured. For a specific braking intensity, you do not have to remember how far you pull the handbrake, but how hard you pull the handbrake. This is much easier and more precise with such fast movements. Once the required parts have been removed from the rod, the spacer can be placed inside the spring. As you can see, the washer prevents the spring from being compressed. Now you can also change the elastomer if you wish. The 60-shore elastomer is installed as standard. The scope of delivery includes an elastomer with a lower resistance and an elastomer with a higher resistance. We therefore have a 50-shore, a 60-shore and a 70-shore elastomer. Only one elastomer must and can be used at the same time. More details about the elastomers and the differences later on. Once the rod has been reinstalled, the blue adjustment wheels must be turned until the optimum pressure point is found. The second blue wheel serves more as a locking screw to prevent the blue wheels from moving. The wheels should be turned tightly enough so that none of the components are loose. This is particularly easy to see from the spring, which is still slightly loose if the adjustment wheels are not tightened enough. As you can see, I had to use a lot more force earlier to get the rod back into position because the spring is blocked. A second option for changing the components if you are unable to get the rod back into position is to remove it on the other side of the rod. Once again, there must be no tension. So first, turn back the blue wheels and then remove the black spring pin. Now there's no more tension on the rod, and the rod can be removed from the guide without any problems. I will now go into the differences between the various configurations. Let's start with the lightest configuration. The spacer is not installed, so I use the spring preload. In addition, the 50 shore elastomer is installed. As you can see, the elastomer can be deformed very much, and it is also relatively easy to deform it. The handbrake is very easy to pull, and we have a relatively long handbrake travel. Here you can also see very clearly that the spring preload is not very strong and can be pulled with one finger. In the second video, I turned the blue adjustment wheels in by 50%. This reduces the spring preload travel and increases the starting resistance of the spring preload. In the third video, I have now installed the spacer washer inside the spring. This means that I completely dispense with the spring preload and the resistance is only generated by the 50 shore elastomer. It is of course also possible to adjust the preload of the rubber damper. In my opinion, however, the spring spacer should be installed for this. This is because the spring would already be fully compressed before the rubber damper could be noticeably preloaded. This allows you to generate a higher starting resistance of the rubber damper. However, you must bear in mind that this also shortens the handbrake travel. If you put the first three videos next to each other, you can clearly see that you have a significantly higher handbrake travel on the left, and you have a quite long and light spring travel. The preload travel of the spring is then reduced in the middle video, and on the right hand side video we have no preload travel because of the spacer washer. Before I explain a little more, I will show you a direct comparison of the three elastomers. As you can see, not only the resistance of the elastomer increases, but also the handbrake travel that I managed to pull is reduced. One reason for this is that more force is required to pull the handbrake to the maximum, but also because harder elastomers do not deform and expand outwards as much, as you can see. Now I come to a brief summary of the possible settings and my favorites. The difference in the handbrake travel is very noticeable if you don't use the spring preload and install the spacer. I therefore prefer to use the spring preload when driving because of the longer handbrake travel and have tightened the blue adjustment wheels by about 50%. When doing this, I use the middle 60 shore elastomer. In my opinion, there could have been a second spring which is a little stronger, because the spring can be compressed relatively lightly. I also measured it and was about 3 kg resistance at the point where the spring was completely compressed. I get on very well with the spring and find it perfectly adequate, but I would probably using the stronger version if one had been included, especially if you don't use the lightest elastomers. You can clearly feel the point at which it changes from the spring to the elastomer, especially if you pull the handbrake slowly. With the 70 shore elastomer you can feel it a little more compared to the 50 and 60 shore. However, it is mainly the faster increasing force that you feel. The resistance curve of a spring tends to increase proportionally and that of an elastomer progressively. You can therefore feel very well when you change from a proportionally increasing resistance curve to a progressively increasing resistance curve. Of course, the faster you pull the handbrake, the less noticeable this is, because the transition is too fast. As a result, this transition becomes somewhat blurred. If this bothers you, you can simply skip the preload by installing the spacer. When I drove with the spacer installed, so without spring preload, I liked the 50 shore elastomer the most. You still had sufficient handbrake travel and the resistance was also good. I used the 60 shore variant when I was driving with the spring preload. The 70 shore variant was a bit too stiff for me personally when driving a rally car. I will show you a few more laps and then continue with the software. SimLab and Grid Racing of our RaceDirector, a free software to customize their products. You must first activate the handbrake in the software so that you can configure it. You shall then calibrate the handbrake first. The maximum force with which you move the handbrake is then logically the maximum point of the recognized range. You can already see that the area of the spring is only a small part of the bar, although the handbrake travel of the spring preload is so long. This is because the resistance is measured by the load cell and not the handbrake travel, and the spring generates significantly less resistance in percentage terms than the elastomer. This can be compensated with a suitable adjusted resistance curve. There are 3 preset settings available here. This then affects the behavior of the handbrake as demonstrated in the video. You can also make fine adjustments yourself by changing the position of the individual points. These settings can then also be saved. It is also possible to set a dead zone in the upper and lower range in which the handbrake should not react. Now we come to the final conclusion and the price of the handbrake. The handbrake costs €199 including VAT. I think the price is very good, especially for a high-end handbrake and for the offered quality. The handbrake not only makes a very good visual impression, the workmanship of the handbrake is also flawless. The handbrake is an all-aluminium construction which makes the handbrake very robust. The handbrake can easily deal with rough and hard treatment without any problems. As far as the flexing of the construction with a non-optimal angle of the mounting is concerned, I can only say that I see it as a positive thing. A handbrake that doesn't flex forces the angle you have to pull on you. Everyone has to decide for themselves how they think about it. The various configuration options with the 3 elastomers and the spring preload are also very comprehensive, and there should be a suitable setting for everyone. Maybe I would have liked another slightly harder spring as an option to generate a harder spring preload. The handbrake is super easy to set with the software. You can also make a few fine adjustments. I can more than recommend the handbrake, and you will do nothing wrong with the handbrake. If you are also interested in the push-pull rally shifter from SimLab, which I use in my video, I have linked the review video in the video description. The push-pull rally shifter is a shifter that can be pulled and pushed, so a sequential shifter directly behind the steering wheel like in the WRC. I hope you enjoyed the video and I was able to answer all your questions. If you have any further questions, you can write them in the comments. A link to the handbrake is also in the video description. Now we come to the promised triple screen onboard video in my motion simulator. Have fun with it and see you next time.